We ultimately want to see our students thrive, but we can't do that work if the adults leading them don't have a sense of stability, sturdiness, and sort of overall health to do their work.
Welcome to Oxygen for Educators, part of the Ripple Maker Project. I'm one of your hosts, Michelle Kinder, and you'll meet Chris Kent Phelps in just a bit. It's our hope to bring you thought-provoking, unscripted conversations full of actionable ideas to fuel your important work in the world. Thanks for tuning in. This space is for you. Hi, Chris.
Hello, Michelle.
Good to see you.
Same.
This conversation with Alejandra, to me, like when I think about her and the work she's doing with the Educators Collective, I feel like there's a punchline sentence that I want to share before you share her bio.
Oh, okay. Bring it on.
This is the punchline that I feel like everything she had to share kind of zones into, that if we want adaptive schools, we have to cultivate regulated leaders, and that you can't fix a complex system with dysregulated humans. So tell us who she is and what we're about to hear.
Okay. Alejandra Barbosa, you say it better.
Alejandra Barbosa.
There you go.
Come on.
Is the CEO of the Educator Collective, which recently merged with Principal Impact Collaborative, which I understand she started 15 years ago with a group of people. She's a consultant turned educator by passion, which I thought was very interesting. And I love how she talked about co-designing the Principal Impact Collective collaborative with principals. I thought that was really interesting that she acknowledged that she used curious questions to listen and craft that program, which later, as I mentioned, merged with the Educator Collective. So she's leading that organization. She talks in her interview about her parents instilling a public service philosophy. She has an obvious reverence for education. I loved hearing about that. She has a very impressive pedigree, went to Princeton University and Columbia University, very, very educated. And I feel like I'm botching this. We have to start over.
We are not starting over. And also, I have to tell you that I didn't realize this, but you and she overlap a lot in terms of your passion around educators and your non-education background, and then co-creating. Like, you really co-created Tacky Box with counselors, and she really co-created her leadership program with school leaders. So that's very interesting. I hadn't thought about that till you said it.
I had neither until you said that. So I love that she stated that their mission is, we ultimately want to see our students thrive, but we can't do that work if the adults leading them don't have a sense of stability, sturdiness, and sort of overall health to do their work, which is how you opened with the punchline.
All right. Well, let's hear it.
Let's do it.
Hi, Alejandra. Hello.
Hi, Michelle. So happy to see you. Thanks for having me.
We've been trying to do this for months and months, and I'm ecstatic that the day has come.
Thank you. I'm so grateful to be here and glad to be with you.
I can't wait to pick your brain about all things supporting educators, because I feel like you're never pontificating, like you're coming from a place of deep relationship with actual humans, and that's rare.
Yeah. Thank you. It is a blessing to be in this role.
Well, tell folks a little about your personal story and how you got to this role, and then I want to unpack everything you know.
Awesome. Well, I'm so grateful to be here and to have this time with you. It's such an honor. I've been such an admirer of yours for so long. But I kind of came to this work super windy path. I was a little bit non-traditional to be leading a program for school leaders and educators. I actually wasn't an educator myself, but kind of worked in finance, worked in management consulting, in the energy sector and across different industries, but had a kind of soul searching moment a couple, years into corporate track that I felt like I really wanted to be fulfilled in my work and when I thought about what would fulfill me, it was serving in education in some capacity. My
Wow.
mom came from Mexico when she was 10 years old, didn't speak the language. She showed up here with her 5 siblings. My grandma didn't have past a 3rd grade education. And my mom just figured it out, figured out a life for herself, for me and my sisters. My dad also was the first to go to college in his family, flipped burgers at the original In-N-Out while he was paying for college and law school. And so education was always at the forefront of what they did for me and my sisters and helped us create a stability in our family. And so I was I had so many opportunities out of my educational experiences because of their hard work that I wanted to contribute in some way.
Wow.
But it kind of came into this weird circle where I had started to do some education nonprofit work. I guess it was 15 years ago, and then had an opportunity to launch this program that was for school leaders. And it felt so resonant to me because I had seen all of the talent development and investment we made in corporate world to support CEOs, to support frontline managers. And a principal is really both of those things, right? They are the CEO of their community and they are a middle manager in this big, large district. And so the complexity of their job is so much more than what I saw in corporate CEO roles, but we give corporate CEOs a lot more support and a lot more resources to do their job. And so
Wow.
I was really excited to think about what could we do for school leaders. And so when the opportunity to launch this program came, I kind of jumped at it, but with a kind of a deep understanding that I didn't know the job of a principal. So I had to ask a lot of questions and learn a lot and really serve them to lift them up.
I wonder if that in some ways served you in being so good at your job that you had that posture of genuine curiosity.
I think that's interesting. I think so. I think the training of a consultant is always to ask a lot of questions too, and to appreciate that we don't know the job of every client we serve, but we know the art of asking questions and then curating supports and resources and bringing ideas to them and then equipping them to take it on and to do it. And so I think that training really helped me to ask questions to leaders. And then I had maybe an added benefit that I didn't say oh, well, I've done it. I know it. Do this, do that. This is the play. This is the strategy. I could sort of say, let me put some things in front of you. And then you tell me if this worked or didn't work for you. And then after years and years of working with principals in the program we were serving them in, they helped me refine it and said, this didn't help me, or this helped me, but you gave it to me 6 months at the wrong time of the school year. Change your sequence of how you're developing us or what trainings you're bringing in front of us. So we really kind of co-designed a leadership development experience with them so that it served them properly in a respectful way.
That just sounds like alchemy, just really kind of magic that you had your background and your lens and your way of using questions and creating a container. And then they had all of their expertise and you had the ego in check to listen and really take their wisdom and redesign. I mean, there's so many places where that could have broken down, and kudos to you that it didn't.
Oh, thank you. Well, it's been a team effort. We've had a lot of folks helping us along the way, but I think I appreciate what you named around, taking the ego out of it because we had to listen to them to know what served them.
Wow. Amazing.
Yeah.
So
thanks.
I'm touched by the image of your family, and I'm curious if you ever overhear your parents talking about you and what you're doing now and how they talk about you.
Oh, that's great. I hadn't thought about that. My mom calls me and tells me I work too much. But I think they, fundamentally instilled this sort of public service philosophy in us too. And it's partly their upbringing, but I also had this constant phrase in my mind of if we can leave a place better than we found it, and that's what we should be doing. And recognizing the privilege we've had by different educational experiences or work opportunities, to never take it for granted and to continually challenge ourselves. My parents have had health issues and my dad still gets up and after every health incident, learns to walk again or goes to therapy. So I think they put that work ethic in my sisters and I in a way that makes us want to do good work in our community. But I don't know what they would say about me. I'd have to, I'm not sure if I want to hear.
I bet they're pleased and proud as they could possibly be.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. I'll have to ask them now.
Okay, you dropped a little breadcrumb for me, so I have to like pick it up and ask. You said your mom calls you and says you're working too much. And one of the things you really help principals with is balance
Yeah.
and thinking about themselves as whole people. And I have a similar role in some of my work, and I sometimes apply it and sometimes I don't. And sometimes I need a call from a family member saying, hey. So tell me how you think about all that, both in serving educators and also just in your own life.
Oh, thank you. No, there's definitely, upswings and downswings. And when we're able to find the right balance, I think what's helped me is actually drawing on some of the curriculum that we've given our school leaders. And I feel so lucky that while we're putting on these programs for leaders, I get to sit in the back of the room and listen in and be like, oh yes, I do need to practice that. Or like, it's a constant learning, right? And it's never like you've arrived or figured it out and all of a sudden have all the answers. There's a constant retrain, which I actually value, that I get to kind of relearn it every year with our next cohort of leaders. And I actually had a principal who was in our program early on, and she had done another program that was similar. And I was like, oh gosh, like, was this redundant for you? And she was like, absolutely not, because I'm in a different place in my leadership and I need to hear that same idea. And it just hits me in a new way. So yes, there are absolutely moments when I sit and think, okay, Lambda, I'm not really living out the practices we've taught our principals, but I can kind of come back to it and reapply it. And I think the biggest, there's so many pieces of our content that I really love, but when we talk about well-being for leaders, we think about a much broader set of ideas than, are you sleeping? Are you eating? Are you exercising? Like, those are all foundational, but it's not just that. A bigger piece is, and I think there's a lot of research around this with the kind of framework we've been using to define well-being, but it's around, they use the word wisdom, but it's really understanding your purpose and your values as a human and what drives you and motivates you. Because if you can't draw back on that, and every day you're waking up and you're like, back in the rat wheel, okay, we're in the race or whatever it is. And so, but when you can stop and say, why am I doing this work? What do I care about? What do I want my purpose and my impact in this community to be? You can motivate yourself and like push through the noise and the fog and be okay to work harder. And I think I'm kind of learning in a phase right now where I'm leaning in because I know what the end vision is and what I want to accomplish. And so I can push in a little bit harder and feel confident that it will slow down and I can find my pace to get back to a different balance. It's not that I'm going to have balance, but like the proportion of the pie, or, how much I index on certain things will look different. But if I'm grounded in why I'm doing what I'm doing and what values I'm leading with, then I can feel more energized to push through kind of a hard phase or a hard moment.
There's two threads I want to pull. One is how relatable it is that it really is a lifelong tweaking. Nobody ever arrives and the clouds part and the angels sing and you've got your well-being crown, Yeah. So I love that, because I think if I were listening, I would immediately turn us off if we thought it was otherwise, if we were acting like, oh, how come you can't do this? Like, it's just, the call is not to master it. The call is to be in relationship with yourself. And pay attention to what things nourish and ground you so you can do your work in the world. And that connection to meaning that you talk about is such a key piece.
Yeah, it's really hard without it. And I'll name, right? There's definitely days where I'm forgetting the purpose, and I'm not being able to kind of see the forest from the trees. And so those days are hard and those days feel stressful and tiring. And it's just like, okay, we just get to Friday and, get to then deal with my children for the whole weekend, right? And it's a different kind of work, a different kind of tired. But I heard someone say recently, it's actually one of our principals, a very wise leader, who described this like wrestling. She was like, I almost appreciate the wrestle, or she probably said it more eloquently than I'm saying, but I appreciate the wrestle because that's where you're learning and growing. And you can sort of see versus someone who may want to have the calm and the peace. And we don't want chaos and like distress, but like framing it as a wrestle is a much more optimistic approach that lets me think, okay, what am I growing? What am I taking? What am I learning from this? And so that helped me reframe it because there was definitely moments where I'm like, oh, I'm just,
Yeah.
this is hard.
Yeah.
This is hard work. And I don't want it to feel this hard. But if I approach it as a wrestle and a learning opportunity, I can sort of power through it in a different way.
Right, because if your premise is it should be easy and things are requiring the wrestling and the grappling, you're going to be frustrated or you're going to go in a shame spiral or ... But if you
Yeah.
think, okay, the wrestling and the grappling is the work, and
Mhm.
out of that comes an expression of my purpose, an expression of what I care about, my own growth, ... Then it's like, okay, what are we going to wrestle with today?
Right.
It's never going to, I'm not going to waste energy being surprised that it's requiring something of me.
Right. And it becomes almost, it can be a joy, right, as opposed to a pain because you're like, ooh, what can I grapple? Like, what's the new challenge du jour? But then you can approach it with a sense of wonder and joy instead of frustration.
I love those two words so much, wonder and joy.
Yeah. I think we all need a little more of that these days.
Yeah, I think we have to kind of almost choose to lean into that because there's so much vying for our attention that's the opposite.
Right.
Tell us about the Educator Collective and, of course, the Principal Impact Collaborative. And is that now considered a program of the Educator Collective since you merged, or how
Yeah,
do you
so
talk about it?
Yeah, so we merged the two organizations where the Principal Impact Collaborative was serving school leaders and district leaders, and the Educator Collective was serving teachers. Now, under one organization, we're serving all of the audiences across the K-12 spectrum, but really with the same end mission, which is lifting up the educators who need to be supported in order to best serve students. We ultimately want to see our students thrive, but we can't do that work if the adults leading them don't have a sense of stability, sturdiness, and sort of overall health to do their work. And so we had a principal fellowship that we were running under the principal program, which is now fully enveloped under the Educator Collective. So we have a series of programs that are specifically for principals and then some for educators. And then we're building out some new programs that will support full campus teams because of some of the positive feedback we heard around we really need to spread this love and this programming we've developed for leaders and separately for teachers and serve them together so that we have a more comprehensive approach in our schools. So now fully moving forward as the Educator Collective, we're really proud to be able to serve as a resource to school districts, but across the full school, not just kind of one audience.
I mean, your mission and the overlap of it with Oxygen for Educators is almost a total overlap. Like we couldn't be more swimming in the same pool.
Right. No,
which makes me happy.
Yes, absolutely. And I appreciate you giving me the chance to come talk with you about it.
And if anyone who's listened for a while is like, this sounds familiar, you might remember the interview with Tom Brandt, who participated in your program and sung its praises.
Yes, he was in our second ever cohort. So we've evolved and kind of continued to improve the program since he's been in it. But he was a leader that just was so hungry to learn. And when we're able to give a space to leaders who want to hone their craft, they're already very talented leaders, right? Tom has been very successful in his career, but by giving leaders another space to practice and work with peers, get some new ideas, new content, test it out, take it to their campus, come back, tweak, right? They can really amplify their impact. And it can serve leaders in different ways. Like I think the beauty of our cohorts are that some principals really need to target their well-being because they're burning out, they're leaving the job faster than they wanted to. And someone like Tom, he would name to us how much the mindful practices helped him become just a more balanced leader because if you'd met him, you assumed he was totally fine. He was rolling with it, but he would name that like he didn't have a sustainable practice in place. And so it gave him some new strategies and some new tools and really like the safety to admit that I need to make some changes to make this job sustainable. And then there are other leaders who come in and probably have that maybe figured out, but they really want to innovate in their schools and they want to think differently about how are we building student-centered schools where we have environments where students can feel supported, respected, and stimulated. And so we have a whole set of curriculum around, how do you redesign your systems within your campus that make the school more student-friendly and really are anchoring on student engagement. So we can kind of fill a niche because I think we talked a little bit about how we define well-being, but part of it is that wonder and curiosity. And so some leaders, to be able to make changes in their schools, see how that translates, see how it positively affects students, that gets them jazzed. And that becomes like their source of well-being because they feel empowered and they feel autonomous. And so we're just trying to give them different or equip them differently so that they can ultimately sustain the work and be more effective in the work.
I mean, that's so elegant. That's so elegant that it's not just about what people traditionally think of as well-being, that being highly charged by the innovation, the creativity, the collaboration, all of those things fuel us in the same way, vegetables do. Like it's all part of it.
Well, I think I've learned through this work and by bringing in content experts who lead our trainings to think differently about well-being. And I always just assumed it was going to the gym and sleeping and eating, right? Or getting a massage on the weekend, right? But there is so much more around your personal values, your source of joy and awe and the science of awe and how that affects your brain chemistry, as well as, when we think about a leader's well-being, how do you lean into feeling good at your job? And if we can, I think about the days I have at work where I'm like, gosh, I hate these like 3 tasks that are so frustrating. And I really wish I could spend my whole day doing the thing that I really love. And if we can learn to sort of become aware of like what those behaviors or responsibilities are, and then reflect on why do I love those tasks or hate those tasks? And then think about as a leader, what do I need to do differently to lean into the things that I don't like? Or how do I distribute the leadership and find out that maybe the things I hated are actually something that my AP loves or my instructional coach loves, and vice versa. The things that he or she hated, I love doing. And like, how do we just become more self-aware so that we can then craft a role or like lean into our jobs in a smarter way, because that then also brings the energy back and you're not drained because you've got to do that same menial task that you hate or that complicated task that you hate, but somebody else could do instead. So we've just broadened the definition of what well-being means for leaders that helps us find all of the sources of energy that we need to, besides just the physical energy we need.
I hear the invitation toward intentionality in everything you all do. It's like it's so different to be in our bodies and feel like life is happening to us versus we are actively participating in at least partially being architects. Obviously there's some things out of our control, but that difference that you're inviting people to kind of flip that switch and really think about what is in your control and what do you want to do about it. That alone brings energy.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. It reminded me of a principal we had when she was coming back to speak to like prospective principals about the program. And she's like, I thought I was coming to this program to get leadership development. And after my year or 2 years in the program, like it's human development. And it was just such a nice reflection because we want that for students, right? We want students to go to school, not just to learn to read and write. We want them to become their fullest selves and to have a sense of empowerment and autonomy. And so in order to create that sense of thriving for them, the adults have to know how to do it. And so we're trying to equip adults to feel that same autonomy and empowerment and capability so that they can embody and role model it for the students, right? And teach them to read and write along the way, right? That has to be a part of the process. But we've really anchored on like practices of human-centered design so that we are addressing the full human, because they're going to get a lot of the technical skills in their district, right? They're going to learn the job of a Principal 101 or AP 101 in their districts, and appropriately so, right? That's the technical skill. But the adaptiveness that you want a leader to have is something that might need to be practiced in a different way or developed in a different way. So we're trying to serve that niche as well.
Hi, I'm Katie Worden, producer of Oxygen for Educators. I want to spotlight our sponsor, TackieBox. TackieBox is an elementary school program that pairs innovative content with a tactile tool in daily practice to teach children to self-monitor their own words and actions and their responses to others. It's a proven tool that reduces behavior incidents by 66%. Through daily self-reflection, students build self-awareness, self-regulation, and meaningful connections. TackieBox is a light lift for teachers with a big impact on student well-being. Go to tackiebox.com to learn more and become a TackieBox district.
There was a program I did years ago that would talk about horizontal growth versus vertical growth. And I hear you saying like districts are pretty equipped to help people with the skills that help them do their job, which is that horizontal growth. The vertical growth is when we change as humans, like we adapt, we level up. Well, it's almost like we download a new operating system, and that changes how we see the horizontal axis, because anytime you're vertical, if you move up, your horizontal axis shifts as well. And so as you change as a human and you grow and you level up and your lens gets either cleaned or more complex or more layered or whatever happens, that can change your entire experience of what once felt menial or frustrating or impossible.
Oh, I love that. That's a great analogy. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. I want to hear your thoughts about how y'all thread the needle around the individual's work versus the systemic and structural things that might be crushing them or whatever. How do you think about that? What kind of conversations are your folks having about that?
It's definitely complicated, and I think at times we can get overwhelmed with how much systems change can we do versus how much individual change can we do. So it's definitely a struggle for us as an organization and for us as Roll 100, like to think about where is our place in this. So I don't think I have a great answer yet, but I think I am really looking to leverage the individuals. To your point, I guess this leveling up analogy is really helpful, right? The more we raise the definition of leadership or change the perception of what a strong leader needs to be developed and what we can expect out of our educators, the more that just sort of builds the momentum and builds the story and hopes to start to influence systems. But no, I think that's still a piece we are struggling with. There are, of course, structural pieces that we're not touching, right? Things that the job that is being asked of educators, we are not at a policy level yet. But we hope to have our partners, right, be able to elevate the voice of principals and teachers in our programs and partner with those that do affect policy, or at least to inform, here's what we're learning, right? We are seeing that these supports have worked in there. We were seeing that their supports maybe have not worked. And what can a district take away from that? And what can they start to bring into their own in-house and development opportunities? And candidly, we really love when like a district is like, hey, you've helped us for a few years. Like, we think we're good. And we're like, yes, awesome. That now you have put in this cultural supports or the development opportunities in house. They don't need us. But I think we are still struggling to figure out how much we can change at a systems level versus working with leaders. I mean, ultimately, our hope is that when we work with the leader and their teachers, that then filters out to build a school community. You see those pockets of success, and then more folks are asking, how did you accomplish that? What was what did you do? And how do we take these ideas to scale? But it's definitely not something we've figured out at the level I'd like to yet.
This is going to be so messy because it's one of those ideas that I'm letting out of my mouth before it's like a little baby chick is coming out instead of that's an awful way to say it, but
It's okay. We'll go with it.
especially for a vegetarian, that's such a weird choice.
It's funny.
Okay, let me think about this. We'll grapple with this together. I'm interested in what you're saying because there's something about that frame that's trusting that well-resourced educators and school leaders and district leaders are going to know what to do to attend to the systemic and structural issues if they are in their highest and best form or whatever that is, if they're kind of feeling supported and resourced. That to me feels a lot like it overlaps with the nervous system work of a lot of the things we try to do to fix things. We are coming at trying to like basically do other people's jobs for them instead of going through a different door, which would be, how do I create the conditions where your nervous system can be in that ventral vagal safe and connected so your natural genius can flow through and you can solve your own problems.
I love that.
That's what I'm hearing in your answer, that there's like an intentional, like, if we do this work, those are the folks who then do this work. And they're the best for it because they're living in the systems. There's a humility about that posture that is really speaking, or I'm really hearing it in what you're speaking.
Yeah, thank you. I love that. We are really hoping, because there is so much work to be done on like the urgent and pressing issues in schools, right? We're doing so many things around, curriculum changes, instructional practices that are necessary and useful. And there's always going to be some new challenge in the system. And so we're trying to build, alongside all of these near-term solutions, we're trying to build the long-term sustainability of the practitioners, because we don't want the same churn. We don't want to, if we continue to lose 20% of our educators every year, right, then we're having to retrain every time. And so if we could actually address that, then we have the consistency of knowledge and expertise that keeps folks in the system. But then also, if we're building the adaptive skill muscle or creating a space for them to build their adaptive skills, it doesn't matter what the challenge was, right? It could have been, a couple years ago, they were all dealing with the pandemic. And then there's a different kind of, measles outbreak, or there's always going to be something new, a closure, a freeze, closes all of our schools in Texas a couple of weeks ago, but there's always going to be something new challenging them. And so we're trying, to your point, build that stableness so that they can withhold and withstand any challenge that comes their way. But I don't want to give a technical solution to that. I want to give an adaptive support.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was hearing. Yeah, that's so much more eloquently put than a baby chick coming out of your mouth.
But baby chicks are cute too.
Yeah, I love that. Tell us what your footprint is. Is it the entire state of Texas?
We're currently DFW, so we've served about 15 different school districts around North Texas. Hopes to expand and would love to be able to serve. Our model is one that is not, it is locally developed, but because our approach is very human-centered, we are constantly, when we go into a new community, we're constantly asking, what does your district need? What are your priorities for your leaders? And in some ways, our size allows us to be really nimble, where we can sort of curate the learning experience based on what districts tell us they need. And every year, we're coming back and saying, what are the newest pressing challenges for your leaders? How do we build that into our curriculum? So we can be really responsive. We have had folks ask us, and, when will you come to our community or come to a new region? And so we're always open to that. We don't want to push in anywhere, but we want to be supportive. And because this is adaptive leadership, it's leadership resilience, it's a little bit, it's agnostic to a school district policy or an instructional model or a curriculum model. It is the adults being grounded, being equipped, and being confident that they can lead and they can serve students to the best of their ability. So it can translate to other communities. And we'd always love to partner with other organizations who are doing similar work and trade notes, right? There's a lot of organizations around the country that support leaders. We're always eager to trade notes and learn from others so we can improve our craft too. But currently, yes, to answer the question, we're currently in North Texas, but really thrilled. We've served about 450 leaders across the Metroplex in the last 10 years. And then educators, we've served under Educator Collective's legacy work. Thousands of teachers have come to our programming, and we've made that program has historically been kind of community-wide. Any teacher in the Metroplex can join an event or come to a training, but come to a community event. And we're aligning it more closely with our leadership development as well, because we're hearing more teachers say, like, I want to be on the path to become a stronger leader. And so now with our recent merger, we're making some refinements and tweaks to how we deliver this work to teachers too.
And the 450 that you've done with the Principal Impact Collaborative, that's very intensive work. It's like a year or two.
It is. We've had a couple different models. Our core model has always been a 2-year fellowship. We're making some shifts now where we'll make them 1-year programs to make it easier for folks to engage. Because some folks just said, like, I really want to do this, but I can't even think 2 years ahead.
Yeah.
So we want to be responsive to that and serve them in the way that they are ready to be served. And then we've done like customized programs. So if a district says, we've had districts come to us and say, actually, my central office leaders need this, or could you do a version of this for our first year principals who can't do a big, long fellowship, but they need some of these like introductory sort of leadership skills around how do I shape culture? How do I build trust? How do I manage my stress? So we've adapted and done different versions. We have kind of a leadership lab where we'll customize and work with a partner and create a program for them based on what they tell us their highest needs are and what format they can take, right? Can they do it in a semester? Can they do it over 9 months? Do they need full days? I mean, we can sort of be flexible and really meet them where they're at.
That nimble that you talked about comes through in that answer.
Yeah. Well, we want to be accessible, right? It would feel counter to our values to say, like, there's only this one way to do it, right? We don't believe there's one definition of a good leader, and we let everybody kind of lean in on their own leadership style and leverage their strengths. And so we're trying to be just as responsive and say, what do you need right now? I kind of liken it to the workout, right? Ideally, everybody would get the full body workout 5 days a week, and that can lead to the best outcomes. But if you just need to work on your arms today or your lower body, like, we'll help you there. And then we can build up to bigger practices. Of course, the full picture is what we really feel like gets us the best outcomes, but we don't want to limit opportunities for leaders who are curious and want to grow.
I used to have a colleague that would say, if someone's coming in and they want a shirt and you're like, but look, we have pants and, socks and underwear, and, then they just glaze over and they walk out. Like, sell them the shirt, give them a fabulous experience with the shirt. And then they'll come back to you when they want the pants and the socks and it feels like that to me. You're wanting to meet them where they are and then trust that in whatever way makes sense will lead to more partnership.
Right. That's our hope.
Yeah. Who contacts you though? Is it district? Like, how do you, if there are people listening and they're like, our district needs this, who is the person that reaches out and gets things going? Yeah.
Yeah. We typically, whoever, in some districts is the head of school leadership, head of schools, the academic side of the house sometimes is looking at different pieces around instruction and curriculum. So it's typically whoever is overseeing principal development or principal supervisors. So that tends to be like the heads of schools or heads of school leadership. And we really see ourselves as a partner to districts to say, what are the pain points you have around sustainability, right? Leaders who are leaving the job too fast, or the adaptive leadership skills you're trying to develop. So we want to complement what they're already doing in districts and give them an extra partner. And because I think there's a beauty, so much of our programming is multi-district collaboration. And so there's such a beauty to learning from peers who are outside of your district. And a lot of our districts actually value that we are bringing them a multi-district initiative because their principals always meet with each other or their teachers always meet with each other. They actually want them to get some fresh ideas and perspectives that can be brought back to their district or brought back to their schools. And so when we have these cohorts of, 7 different districts are bringing leaders together, or bringing partners together, there's a really nice learning opportunity and peer support to take away that feeling of like, I'm not alone in this, right? There are other people going through what I'm going through. And, the kind of funny part that always I kind of giggle about is a lot of times people feel like, oh, well, it's just my organization, or it's my district is just awful. If I just went over there, and like, is the called grass is greener complex. But then you realize like this work is hard everywhere. Like we're all having different challenges, even our own districts. And so you can sort of, commiserate and then move forward and say, okay, now what am I going to do about it? And how are we working? And what ideas can I take from your district that would work in mine, and vice versa? How do we share resources? So we really like to see that kind of, collaboration and idea pollination that comes out when we have multiple districts in the same room.
Yeah.
Which I think is just hard for a district to do, right? Districts don't have the bandwidth or the capacity to do that themselves. So we want to partner with them in that.
That's really juicy, like cross-pollinating and normalizing two things that impact well-being. Like when you feel like less crazy because you hear it's happening to other people. And then
Yes.
also when someone sparks something in you that you either had let go dormant or was never there before that exchange. It's really, really powerful.
Right. Yeah. Thank you.
There's a segment of folks who listen to this podcast that are not educators, but they're interested in the experience of educators. And I feel like you've been in deep relationship with 450 plus. What do lay people misunderstand about the emotional experience of school leaders in 2026?
Oh, that's great. I think I never fully appreciated the complexity of the job. I kind of named that, and I always think of the simple problems, complicated, complex. Have you heard that kind of like a simple problem is baking a cake, right? There's like a recipe and you can follow it. A complicated problem is putting a rocket into space. Like it's got a lot of steps and a lot of formulas, but like it is feasible. A complex problem is raising a child. There is like no formula, no playbook. Every time around you do it is different. And I did not fully appreciate, I thought my jobs in the corporate world were stressful and complicated, but they were not as complex as what a job of a principal is and what an educator is, especially as we've continued to add responsibilities and put expectations on them without taking anything off their plates. And so I think that complexity is one I couldn't fully fathom, and how
That's
different
good.
like they know what they want to get done. Like in most jobs, you kind of know your end target and what you're hoping to accomplish, but the inputs are constantly changing. The resources are constantly changing. And so this process of asking an individual human to solve so many problems at once is just can be overwhelming. And so I just want folks to appreciate how much we ask of leaders and school leaders and educators, and have an empathy for that, and then find ways to support them, whether it's, neighborhood programs or local like PTAs that can support schools, or if it's, finding ways to put resources into the school that complement what they aren't able to support themselves. But I think I just didn't fully appreciate the complexity of the role.
That is lovely. Yeah, and such a capture of the real headwinds, and the reason such extraordinary people are attracted to this work is because it is complex, and no day is like the last one, and it is such a human-centered job that you can't predict what you're going to encounter and how you're going to navigate it until you do. And then the
Right.
next day it's a little bit different, even if it feels the same. Yeah.
Yes. And I have never met more passionate, hardworking people than the principals I've gotten to serve. And, as a mom of 4 kids, I think about how much we want to do for our kids. And they're doing it for all of our babies, right? They are bringing in all of our babies in every day and keeping them safe and developing them and supporting them with such compassion and conviction. And so I'm constantly humbled by the principals we work with, because they come to work every day, work long hours in service of other people's babies. And I just am so grateful for that.
So beautifully put. And, if there are people listening going, what can I do? Remembering that is one thing we can do, and not getting swept into the political winds, winds, that are creating almost like an adversarial relationship between parent community and educators, or even educators and school leaders. And like there's all of these like almost hijacking going on, that if you want to make a difference, stay out of that noise and stay in relationship with the educators in your life or in your kids' lives. And remember, you're pulling on the same side of the rope. And the second you start thinking of them as pulling on the opposite side of the rope, you are creating moral injury, and you
Yeah.
are hurting their capacity to help raise your babies.
Oh, I love that. That's beautiful, Michelle. And I think you're absolutely right. Right. Principals didn't come to this work because they wanted to be politicians. They didn't want to be politicians. And you're right. That has become a version of the job right now that is not what they asked for, nor they were trained to do and wanted to do. But I'm so glad you named that. Thank you.
And it pulls focus. I mean, one of my pet peeves from the jump as a leader was anytime adult drama diluted something we were trying to do for kids. I couldn't stand it, and I still can't stand it. And I feel like that it's sort of on blast right now. Maybe it's getting a little better. I don't know. What are you hearing? Is it still kind of like ramping up, or people leveling out? Is it better? What?
I think this year has been the hardest, or at least some of the principals I've talked to have named, because I've asked, every year it's like, what's your source of stress? Right? We actually track their stress levels as part of the program to see where in the year it spikes and how we can support them and what are the sources of stress. And some of them will name the kind of political nature has become so complicated for them. And to your point, they want to be on the same side, right? They're here to serve our children and don't want it to be an adversarial relationship. I don't know if I think it's leveled off or not, but it definitely has become a pain point, particularly this year.
I don't think we could say it's leveled off if this feels like the worst year for a lot of your leaders. Like that sounds like a 3-alarm fire to me.
Mm-hmm.
So any of us who are tracking and paying attention and seeing it for what it is, we probably have to overfunction to just balance it. And I think for me, my MO was kind of like, just trust the teachers. And if something escalates to where my kid wants me involved or the teacher wants me involved with, then great. But I wasn't like actively letting folks know, hey, I see you, I appreciate you. Maybe I was, but not nearly as intentionally as I have the last 5 or so years, because I'm thinking to myself, they're hearing from the agitated and the agitators all day, every day. That's a smaller percentage than the people that are just so grateful for them. But if we're silent, if we're not balancing it out, it's that small percentage of agitated agitators that it's going to feel like that's the whole parent community.
Right. No, I'm glad you're naming that, right? How do we extend the recognition to see them as humans, to appreciate that they have such a heavy responsibility on their plates, and to value them and to show them how much. I appreciate that you're naming, like, we have to overdo it in a way.
Yeah, we have to overdo it for now.
Every time I see my kids' teachers now, I'm going to constantly come back at them with the gratitude and recognition, and to see them for who they are and what they're doing. Yeah, thank you for that.
Well, we co-created that, so thank you. When you thought about coming on, was there anything, because I feel like I need a part 2 and part 3, because I want to hear more about the stressors. I want to hear, there's so much more I want to hear about the granular things about the educator experience that maybe the vast majority of people don't know, we're just going to have you back.
I'm
But
happy to do it. Yeah.
For today, was there anything that you wanted to make sure we covered?
Yeah, thank you for that. I just am grateful for the opportunity to highlight what these individuals do and how we support them. And I think we need to be mindful of supporting them in a different way. And I think we've gotten a little complacent. Maybe that's too strong of a word, but when I came to this work 10 years ago, right, the turnover rates was 1 in 5, and worse, 1 in like 25% in high need schools, turnover of leaders and teachers. And that's, nationally hasn't changed in the last 10 years. And I hate that we're complacent in that and we're comfortable with that and we're just trying other things. And I appreciate that some of the new things we're trying are effective, right? We need to think about instruction differently. We need to think about what curriculum materials come in front of students and how equipped teachers are and getting them in a pipeline of proper training and development. All of that is important and necessary. And I don't want to get complacent with 20% turnover every year, because that is so much money we've invested in people that we're losing and churning each year. And so when I see that the narrative, or I don't know if it's the right word to use, but we've gotten kind of comfortable with that. And I don't want that for my kids. I don't want to have a new principal at 1 in 5 schools every year. I don't want to have new teachers in front of kids who aren't prepared and ready. And so I want us to honor the investments we're making in new strategies that are thoughtful and smart, and keep the capable, talented staff we have and keep the workforce we have. And so we need to give them the supports and training so that that number comes down.
I mean, it's there's such a business case for it. Like no other industry would tolerate that level of turnover and just be like, what are you going to do? Money down the drain, but oh well. No, it's crazy. Money,
right.
Talent, all the things. Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. Stability for kids. Right. We want stable. I want stable for my kids, and I want it for every child.
Yeah.
So I think that's the piece.
And we want like the extraordinary educators who find themselves in those systems to believe they don't have to choose living their purpose as educators or attending to their own well-being and mental health. Like a lot of people feel like it's either or. And I feel like your programs are sending the message of here are some ways that you can attend to your mental health, your well-being, and stay in education.
Right. Absolutely. Right. That would be beautiful for them to see that path and to see that growth for themselves. And ultimately, we know it serves our students better when they've got more equipped and more experienced educators. So absolutely.
How do people support you and your work if they want to learn more or donate or anything to support you?
Yes, we would welcome all the supporters as are interested. Certainly when districts are interested, they can reach out to our website, educatorcollective.org, or reach out to me at our team as all on our website. But we're always looking for investors and supporters of this work because of the nature of district budgets and funding cycles. It is really hard for districts to put money into really high quality talent development. And so we want to be able to give them the development they need, even though it may not be at a price tag that they can manage. And so we look for foundation donors, individual donors, corporate sponsors. They can sponsor us just, direct funding and grants, but they can also sponsor events for teachers. We can underwrite, and they can try to be a named sponsor of a teacher training or a principal training. So they are always welcome to check out our website or contact me and my team. We're always happy to partner with folks, especially when you think about like the neighborhood schools, right? So many of our, I drive by a lot of the principals are in my neighborhood, and I think I want to know that school is thriving and they have a sturdy, stable leader. And even if my kids aren't there, in every single campus, right, someone has a connection to that neighborhood school. And so we want to lift up the adults and invest in them. So we always are grateful for any financial support because we do need it to sustain the work. It's unfortunate that it's not something districts can manage on their own. It's just the nature of funding. But so appreciate all philanthropic and individual support of the programs.
Wonderful. Well, I am like signed, sealed, delivered fan of you and your
Thank
work
you.
and just so appreciate it and can't wait to have you back to learn more.
Thank you, Michelle. It's such an honor to talk to you, and thank you for giving us an opportunity to share about our work.
Talk to you soon.
Thanks.
Welcome back, Chris.
Thank you. Thank you.
Does she class us up or what? Like the
that's a
mean,
first.
the mean of our classiness jumped way up just hanging out with her for a minute.
I enjoyed the interview.
What stood out to you?
Well, the first thing I have to touch on, which is kind of just a small statement that she made, but my brain went straight to it, was when she talked about the complexity of a principal's job outweighing the complexity of a CEO's job, and how we in the corporate world invest so much in leadership training for CEOs, but we overlook it in school systems. And when you think about the impact to the world of a school system, that just seems so flawed. So I appreciated that she pointed that out. And I think that her observation carries a lot of weight, having been a consultant with BCG and working in that space, and then seeing the role of a principal. And specifically, the two things that kind of resonated with me was that the inputs of the job are constantly changing. So you might show up one day, thinking you're going to flex a certain leadership muscle, and then everything changes and you have to adapt to that. And then also that we're asking an individual human to solve so many problems at once. That's overwhelming to think about it from that standpoint. So I just appreciated her pointing that out.
Agreed. That was my first big chunk I dove into as well.
Why did you copy me?
Because we share a brain at this point. But even the simple, like the way schools are structured, school leaders are asked to be middle managers and CEOs at the same time, which made me think of Lindsay Wharton's work. Past interview, go back and listen if you haven't. It's very, very poignant how many ways we set extraordinary people up for, messy outcomes or messy final products because some systemic and structural things need to be attended to.
Mm-hmm.
I want to look at my notes about that concept of the complex. So I was thinking about, like, she talked a lot about how she's focused on adaptive leadership, like really creating that resilience and that sturdiness, that ability to deal with whatever comes at it at a leader versus technical assistance or technical strategies, which I thought was so profound. And complexity or complex systems that really requires adaptive leadership. Like, you're always going to be missing it a little if you're throwing technical knowledge at complex problems. But if you create sturdy, resilient, adaptive leaders, then in real time, they're going to hit the mark more and more often, regardless of how complex it is. The other thing that this made me think of is that control strategies fail in complex systems.
Say more about that.
Like leadership that's all about command and control, or like removing the space for people to be creative or autonomous. Like, those types of strategies work well if you're dealing with a simple issue like someone on a line putting plastic toys together. Those control strategies actually don't necessarily mean you've got a mismatch, but you absolutely have a mismatch if you're coming from a posture of control and you're working in complexity.
That's interesting.
Isn't that interesting?
Mm-hmm.
And so many of our attempts to navigate the complexity in education are control and fear-based.
Mm-hmm.
And they need to be curiosity and expansion based instead. And she made me think about all that.
Well, and also to that point, they seem to be very laser focused in their mission that at the Educator Collective, that it's focused on human development, and they stay away from attempting to influence the structure of education systems. They trust that if they create these adaptable humans who understand the inner workings of the organization better than someone from the outside, they're going to solve that problem. And so I like that they stay completely focused on the human development side. She was very clear in that mission. And I could tell just in the way that she interacted with you, she's learned a lot in the 15 years she's been doing this. Like, you can tell that she drank the Kool-Aid and has really embodied and adopted the teachings.
Yeah, completely agree.
I felt like I was watching I know she's not a therapist by trade, but I felt like I was watching two therapists have an interview.
It's funny. She does have that vibe. I would tell her all my secrets for sure. Anything else about that complexity piece? Or
Not about that piece, but when you brought up just the need for autonomy, my next point, if you're good with me going there, is their definition of well-being. And I know we talk a lot about that can sometimes seem fluffy, and hers is so different. And the words that she used associated with that definition to me were so different. First of all, she specifically said their definition of well-being is understanding your purpose and your values as a human, what drives you, what motivates you, which obviously took me back to our interview with Alex Vesely and Viktor Frankl, his grandfather's work and logotherapy and man's search for meaning. But I loved that. And then also her addition of wonder and curiosity, awe, those things being paired with that. She said, well-being is not about a massage or hitting the gym, but about personal values, your source of joy and awe, and what it does to your brain. It's a shift in how we talk about that. And that resonated with me much more than other definitions of well-being.
Yes, there is so much depth to it, and it made it feel more like respectful of that work instead of just like, slap a Band-Aid on something. So her discussing that took me to self-determination theory, which suggests that human well-being depends on three core needs: autonomy, believing we have agency and choice; competence, feeling effective and capable; and then relatedness, feeling connected and valued. So her program and her definition of well-being really attends to those three core needs, as opposed to what we see in a lot of systems, which is where autonomy is stripped, competence is undermined, relatedness is either, put on the back burner or completely sort of pulled out of systems. And then we're like, why aren't you okay? She's like, no, you gotta do all of this, because meaning and agency and connection, those are protective factors. And they're the things that pull leaders up into that ventral vagal state so they can solve the technical issues from that proximity. Yeah.
I'm just thinking about if I'm a classroom teacher listening to this, and let's just say I have a leader who hasn't worked on his or her human development, how does that apply to me? Do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, like if you're someone and you're in a system where you can point to that autonomy, competence, and relatedness are getting stripped from your system, it makes me think of, again, Alex's interview. Like, at that point, you have to decide, like, what do I want to do about that in my system? Or if it's asking too much of me to try to be an agent of change in this system, so I'm not able to serve in purpose and meaning, then what is next for me? That's the equation. You got to figure out, like, how do you move from passive victim to co-creator in a system? And then how do you stay awake to the fact that at some point, being a co-creator in a system that's closed to that or even toxic might be asking more of you than you're willing to give. And then you focus on what's next for you and what does a graceful exit look like.
Do you think it's possible in those types of systems to be able to just shut your classroom door and create that kind of space within the four walls of your classroom?
I think people do it all the time. It's not ideal. It gets undermined. It gets diluted. But I think we have extraordinary teachers in toxic systems closing their door and being in deep relationship with their students and getting great outcomes despite the system instead of because of the system. And that's what I love about Alejandra's work, is she's trying to create systems that support those teachers instead of putting teachers or even school leaders in positions of having to work against that, what would be the right word? Just non-functioning state of a system. Or that's the worst sentence I've ever said in my whole life.
No,
and I've
actually,
said some bad ones.
It's actually not. The one where you said something about a baby chick coming out of your mouth in that interview might be the one. I kept waiting for you to recover from that one, and it wasn't happening.
So you're saying that was bad, but there's been worse, so hang in there. Okay, I get it.
One thing that I made a note of, and I can't remember if Alejandra said that or if I just thought it, but to make a list of what brings you joy and awe so that you can watch for that in a day. Like, that's a game I play all the time. Like, where are those moments that pop up? And that might be helpful to people who are having to close their door and work in that. Within those four walls to stay connected to their purpose.
Oh, I love that.
Because it's such a beautiful purpose. And how can we arm educators with tools that keep them in the trenches? We need them.
Yeah,
we need you, listeners.
Okay, you pinged me around awe. So can I share a little bit of Dacher Keltner's work, who's just an extraordinary, very accessible researcher who's done a lot of work with awe. And
yes, as long as you work baby chicken.
You're in awe that I can be that weird. I get it. His research showed that awe expands our perception of time. It reduces that ruminator in us. It lowers inflammatory markers, increases vagal tone, which is basically our capacity to flexibly move back up into that safe and connected ventral vagal after a stressor. It shifts focus away from our ego-centered thinking, and it increases generosity and pro-social behavior. So when leaders experience awe, our physiology literally shifts. And then that, of course, shifts how we show up in the world. So when Alejandra talks about how her work with leaders isn't just about the obvious, like, well-being, but it's also about, like, sparking innovation and creativity and all of that. And knowing that that's energizing leaders, that is a neurobiological phenomenon. It's not just like that's, kind of like academic or whatever. She's creating the conditions for leaders' neurobiology to work for them instead of against them.
So cool.
Yeah, I have Dacker on our list of folks to visit with about possibly coming on because he's really, really compelling.
Love it.
Yeah. What else you got?
Just to wrap up on well-being, I thought, and you've brought up a couple different ways that this ties together, but I've never heard anyone talk about having a sense of power and autonomy connected to well-being. I had not. So that was just interesting to me. And then you brought up, what was the theory that you mentioned just a little while ago? What was the name of it?
Self-determination theory.
Self-determination theory.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting to me.
Yeah.
See, I learned so much from you guys on this podcast.
And also, isn't it Dan Pink that okay, I'm not trusting my memory, but he also has 3 things that are core to motivation. And one of them is autonomy. I'm blanking on the other 2, but it's, all layers.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What's on your list?
Okay, I want to talk about her wrestle reframe.
Oh,
'cause
yes,
I think that's
please.
super profound. Just moving away from the notion that leadership should be easy, which then when it's not, we go into shame spirals or blame spirals or whatever. If in her frame, if you're helping leaders think about leadership being, wrestling or grappling, I think she called it du jour, like what is the thing we're dealing with every day, and how is that creating space and opportunity for us to grow and get better and stronger? That also changes one's relationship with stress, which changes physiology. So like if I'm dealing with stress as like or stress problems, whatever I'm grappling with that day as like this shouldn't be happening, then that's going to like be read as threat by my nervous system. And that's going to give me a cortisol overload. If I'm interacting with those exact same challenges as, okay, we knew something was going to happen today. This is what's happening. How are we going to show up in the face of it? And I'm more focused on the challenge of it and the growth and, all of those pieces, then that puts focus and resilience more front and center. And like I'm having a completely different experience at the exact same job.
Mm-hmm.
So interesting to me how she has just built that in.
It brought that quote up that I love. Comfort and growth can't ride the same horse. So you have to think about which horse you're on at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And not even just leaders, just everyday people. Like if you've made your choice, I liked the connection to meaning that she made, because if you've chosen to operate in a space where meaning is what you're chasing or what you value, there are hard things that come with that. And so if you can view that as you're wrestling with the complexities of that and find the joy in that instead of focusing on the pain of it, it's just a nice reframe said from a 7 on the Enneagram.
No, I love it. And I hope people go back and listen to Alex's 2-part interview because his work and Alejandra's work are very connected and very like resonant of each other.
You can also read about it in the upcoming Oxygen for Educators magazine.
Hey, plug, hey.
Yes, I love that. Thank you for bringing that up. That was on my list as well.
I'm looking and seeing if I had anything
I think you
else.
made the comment, which I jotted down. The wrestle is the work, and what comes out of that is an expression of my purpose, what I care about. I liked that. That was a Michelle Kinder special. It was much.
Was it better than
much
the
more
baby chick?
Yes, much more profound.
That's funny. What else?
I also liked your comment, which was related to the perspective shift of just being the architect of your own life, because I do think when you're viewing it from this is what I've chosen and this is who I want to be and what I want to do, the hard feels different.
Right,
when you
right,
think about it
right.
from that standpoint.
Yeah.
And it not happening to you, but this is something you chose. And
Yeah.
there are complexities with every choice we make.
Yeah, yeah. And in fact, the framing it as happening for you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how different do you interact with challenges if you're like, okay, this is the human ride, and what am I going to do with it? Versus every time something hard happens, feeling like victimized or like, hey, I didn't sign up for this. This is precisely what we signed up for.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's good.
Interesting. I have another one, but I don't want to change gears if you're
Change gears and then I'll shift again.
okay. Okay, the next baby chick that I would like to offer.
Well done. Well done.
Just kidding. I wanted to talk about how palpable her grief was about the 20% turnover and how we've normalized it and accepted it and become complacent around it. Like, I felt that wave hit me like a ton of bricks, both when I was talking to her and when I re-listened to the interview.
So I'm not going to shift gears because that was the point that I wanted to talk about too, because I didn't know that statistic. And then I spent a lot of time chatting with Copilot about this. What I found so interesting was just if this were in the corporate space, it would be viewed so totally different than in the education space. There was a whole piece that I found on healthy, high, and dangerous turnover rates. And they're different in education. It was interesting because there was more about what's done in the corporate world when turnover is that high. But then when it got to the education part, it talked about how the stakes are higher in education. So the specific numbers are lower. So for instance, high turnover in corporate is 10 to 20% annually is considered pay attention zone. And the danger zone is 20+% annually, but it's opposite in education. Healthy is 0 to 7, high is 7 to 12%, dangerous is 12 to 20%, critical is 20+%. And it talked about education has lower thresholds than corporate because teachers have direct impact daily on students. It's harder to replace a teacher mid-year, requires obviously certification, special training, and that teachers carry such a high emotional and workload demand. So even moderate turnover can destabilize a school. But yet we're looking the other way, focusing on corporate turnover.
Yeah. And even just being like, this is how it is, which again, you would never see in systems that are driven by different metrics or different resources.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking about just sort of like how much that level of turnover reshapes the culture of a school.
Mm-hmm.
And the culture of a school is such a powerful lever for all the metrics that we measure that are more in the academic sphere. And this is, I don't think it's overstating to acknowledge that level of turnover can translate into something akin to like organizational trauma. And so you're just always reverberating from the changes and the getting people up to speed and the, holding a line on standards or culture or expectations. And you never get to that deeper work because people aren't there long enough and your attention has to go to the most pressing issue. And so the most pressing issue is to get those new folks up to, adequate. But then like, that's not what kids need. That's not what the adults in the building need. So it's like such an undercutting of what we're hoping for. that just like you can't get past go.
Well, and if you step back and say the whole purpose of education is student outcomes, and it has a direct impact on student outcomes, like that, it has to be changed.
Yeah.
It has to be changed.
Yeah. And unfortunately, we're kind of creating the conditions at the moment for it to go in the other direction. A notable exception, Alejandra's work.
There you go.
Like
Yeah.
very, very specific to how do we keep amazing people in education feeling like they're not having to make the impossible choice of my well-being or my purpose. Like she's done such a beautiful job creating the conditions for people to be like, I can attend to my well-being and stay in education instead of it being some sort of forced choice, which I think a ton of people feel right now.
Feels like a forced choice. There was a statistic that I found that said only 16% of the turnover rate is because of people retiring. That's forced exit.
Yeah, right. Wow.
So, yeah, I felt like the overarching message of this, number one, was hopeful because it sounds like the work is working. And even, our first, before we started this podcast, we met with Tom Brandt together for coffee, and he talked about the PIC program that he went through and how transformational that was for him. And he was so hopeful in describing it. And I just feel like what they're doing is the answer. And whatever we can do, like this podcast and magazine, to support that kind of work matters, because we want those teachers who are so attached to student outcomes, that is their why. We want to arm them so they can stay in the profession. And I loved, by the way, how Alejandra talked about it was the stability or sustainability of the practitioners. Like that, those words, the sustainability, that's a powerful word to use. And we talk about sustainability all the time, but not in reference to human beings in the trenches doing the most important work in our country.
Right. Sustainability of the practitioner. And did she also use the word, am I remembering this correctly, sturdiness? Yeah, I loved that too. Like it's just such a different mission to deal with supporting educators from that posture, as opposed to, either getting in their business about the technical expertise or something like that.
Well, because I think the well-being can, as we said in the beginning, well-being can sound fluffy, but when you talk about it from a standpoint of, no, this is about the sustainability of the practitioners who are doing the work. And I loved her statement that they're working long hours in service of other people's babies. Like everything we can do in the name of sustainability of the practitioners matters.
Absolutely. Oof. One of the things I did with her interview is try to go and think about people who might be in systems that are not attending to this, kind of like your earlier question, and what are some things that they could do that are in the locus of their control. Maybe it's a whole system and they're really attending to it, or maybe it's that one classroom, but can I share some of
Please
those,
do.
or do you want to hit some
No,
other
please
points
do.
first? So one is like getting in the habit of like a why check, like, why am I doing this work? What values am I serving? What future am I building? Just, I know there's been so much conversation from Simon Sinek's work and other people's work about reconnecting to why, but it's because it does matter. Like it does change your experience of the hardship or of the struggle or whatever. When I was a family therapist, we spent a lot of time going, this is what's happening to you. What's the sense you're making of it? And a lot of times what's happening is there's not often control over changing that, but the sense one makes of it, or the way one connects what's happening to them to their bigger purpose, their meaning, their why, that does completely change the experience. So just having that why check with yourself can stabilize and buffer you from some of those systemic, ick factors that are happening for a lot of people that are listening. That's one. We've talked about this before, but just like an energy audit, like staying in deep conversation with yourself about what drains you, what energizes you, what can you delegate? What's misaligned? What are you under attending to? What are you over attending to? Just being in like almost like a self-supervisory relationship. So you're not waiting on someone else to ask you the questions that help you gain clarity about what you need. You're in deep conversation with yourself all the time about those little clues. I think that's something we can all do. Her wrestle reframe, when something feels hard, instead of thinking this shouldn't be happening, ask, what muscle's being built here? What's the opportunity? Who am I on the other side of this?
But you have to do number one first, right? The values work in order to do the wrestling.
Yeah. That's an interesting tie.
Thanks. I try.
Oh, I love it. Okay. And then another one, to me, she and I were singing in the same choir about just like, you cannot be in a strategic framework, a strategic minded problem solving, if you are dysregulated. So just noting, like, where's my nervous system? Do I need to bring energy into my body? Do I need to kind of bring soothing into my system because the mobilized energy is overtaking it? What do I need in order to get back to that ventral vagal safe and connected state so that I can then strategize? We've got a lot of educators out there working their tails off trying to problem solve and strategize and navigate all the complexity of their jobs from a totally dysregulated state. And that doesn't work, because when you're in a really big survival state, everything narrows and everything gets black and white, and you have to attend to things at such a base level that you will stay frustrated. But if you can just get yourself back into that nervous system state, what seemed impossible will just flow like water.
So if they find themselves in the middle of a day in that fight or flight mode, what are 3 things somebody could stop and do?
So if you're in a fight or flight mode, that would indicate you've got more mobilized energy than your system can metabolize. So the distinction being, if you're in a shutdown mode, your immobilized energy is what's running the show. So that's an important distinction, because if you're in fight or flight, you've got to do things that bring in that calming. So taking deep breaths, making your exhale longer than your inhale, moving your body in a way that feels like rhythmic and calming to you, picking up the phone and texting or calling a friend that you can borrow some of that co-regulation from, some of that calming energy. That'd be 3 quick and easy free. Great, if you're in a shutdown state, then you want to bring energy into your body. So that would maybe be a brisk walk, or, like, so simple, so powerful, music. Sometimes when people are in shutdown mode, all they can ask of themselves is to literally hit play, but a certain song can really bring energy into your system. So noting, are you immobilized? Are you overly immobilized or overly mobilized? Which survival state is in charge right then? And then if you are immobilized, the way up to that ventral vagal safe and connected is to bring energy into your body. If you're overly mobilized, the way up to that ventral vagal is to bring soothing, calming signs of safety, reminders that that are really literally balancing out that scale of signs of safety coming in stronger, louder, more frequent than signals of danger.
Helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome. That's that. Let me see if there's another one that's worth. Well, we talked a little in the conversation, and I feel so strongly about this notion of how much educators are dealing with because of the narratives that have created adversarial relationships. Like I have seen more pain in the eyes of educators and school leaders in the last 5 or so years related to that than all that they're dealing with. It's so hurtful to them to know that their integrity is being questioned, their competence is being questioned, their commitment to their students is being questioned. And so an easy takeaway, if you're a teacher and you feel like the only voices coming through to you are those agitated agitators, then widen your lens, make it intentional to connect with some of the parents that represent the most of us. If you're a parent, understand that right now it's our work to overdo sending signals of safety to educators through appreciation, connection, really viewing them as humans, like Alejandra said, like really seeing them as people, fully seeing them. If we show up with overdoing signs of safety, there's a tiny chance it can balance the scales, because what we know for sure is right now the agitated agitators are showing up a lot with signals of danger. So we have a really concrete thing we can do even today about that.
Love that. Love that.
Anything else on your list?
There's not. I just, I loved her comment about working long hours in service of other people's babies. And it ignited my heart and just made me want to say loudly, please stay in the trenches and let us know how we can help you and serve you.
And thank you. Thank you for all that they do. And we see it and we appreciate it. And we represent the larger group. We're just quieter. And that really has to change.
Great point.
Well, a huge thanks to Alejandra, and hopefully folks will dig into her work and how they can support her work. And a huge thanks to you, Chris, and to Katie. And we will be back next week with another Radical Hope episode and more interviews after that.
Perfect.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Oxygen for Educators. Please like, share, and follow, and if inclined, leave us a 5-star review so that we can keep making content for you. Let us hear from you if you know someone we should interview or a topic we should cover.
The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the guest and host and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of any organization. The content is provided for informational and educational purposes only and is not intended as professional advice. Listeners are encouraged to use their own judgment and seek appropriate professional support when needed. Oxygen for Educators, its host, and production partners are not responsible for any actions taken based on the information shared in this podcast.